It's always very impressive to speak in front of a minister, and especially in French. Je vais le faire en français cette fois-ci, puisque nous sommes dans la Méditerranée.
I'll speak French, given that we're talking about the Mediterranean. Welcome again. Welcome to everyone, and especially to our eminent speakers who will be talking to us this afternoon.
The calls for action.
Those who've been preparing the calls for action are welcome too. Those who have announcements for us.
And
thank you very much to Tatjana Hema, who we are particularly happy to have taken up 2 challenges this year, the first of which is to be the co-chair, together with the Secretary-General, who is with us, and the second, Hendrik Sala, who was supposed to be moderating this, but unfortunately, because of COVID, can't be with us. So thank you very much, twice over, for stepping in at the last minute. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary of State, and I would invite you to come to the front and to open this session on the Mediterranean, which is so close to our hearts. Madam Minister.
Bonjour ou rebonjour à tous.
Hello again to everyone. The Mediterranean and this workshop on the Mediterranean 2030, which is at the heart of our considerations, especially for a certain number of those of you who've been working with us since the World Congress on Nature in Marseille that took place in September, and all of the commitments that we've been making together, which predate this very exceptional space that we have, that takes up 1% of the world's ocean surface area, but contains some of the richest treasures where biodiversity is concerned, over 17,000 species. Then we have the Blue plan as well that has been signed, covering 40% of marine species in the Mediterranean, which are declining today. That means that stronger action is needed. Coordination is required across the Mediterranean basin. And there are more. These activities go beyond the impacts that we're aware of. Experts have been sounding the alarm bells. Maritime practices and unsustainable fishing, sometimes irresponsible tourism, and other forms of pollution, which are affecting the Mediterranean basin and making it a very dense and urbanized area, a very strong area for trade as well in this sea, which is under pressure because of pollution. This means that together we came together and decided to act together with a scientific basis, which tells us that we are afraid that we're going to be exceeding the 1.5 degree increase compared to pre-industrial levels, and we think there's going to be a 3 to 7 degree increase. So we know just how urgent this is, and that we really need to focus now to grapple with these environmental pressures facing the Mediterranean. Of course, given this backdrop, we have to be more and more ambitious in our measures, better protection, more sustainable, restore ecosystems in the Mediterranean. And that's what we've been doing at national level, certainly, by undertaking a number of commitments. Firstly, to make sure that marine protected areas are, and that's what FEFM has been doing, together with its program on shoring up management costs, but also bringing together conservation stakeholders as well, with a global program with comprising €7 million. FEFM is putting in 1.5 million of that for some very targeted actions on the Mediterranean and developing countries. Also, as part of the Mediterranean Action Plan, there is the PlanX 2030. That is a plan that we launched at the World Nature Congress. Firstly, we wanted to protect 30% of the Mediterranean between now and 2030. The President of the Republic went even further by agreeing to protect 5% of the Mediterranean waters in France by now in 2027. So that's an extra step, and that will be kept a very close eye on to ensure that that presidential commitment is indeed respected. As we know, we also need to think about how to be more sustainable with our fishing stocks. We have fisheries and also the more general collection of marine resources, extraction of those species as well. And that is what we have to, firstly, we have to stamp out illegal fishing between now and 2030. At the same time, we're going to have to strengthen the joint international control programs as well. Once again, we're going to have to come up with the means and the coordination required to try to monitor these activities in the area. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the many stakeholders, the Coalition Against Plastic. That's a scourge that the Mediterranean suffers from in particular. We're being more and more ambitious within Europe, but we also hope to have paved the way for commitments towards the circular economy and the struggle against plastic waste, which was adopted in France 2 years ago, with a progressive elimination of single-use plastics, which is one of the top causes of the harmful substances polluting the environment, sustainable alternatives, reinforcement of waste collection, and also more means dedicated to managing plastic as we move through this transitional period. Also with a strong target aimed at the greening of maritime transport, green ports in the Mediterranean with greater electrification, access to alternative fuels for vessels, and also better support for emissions. And I welcome the commitments made in Barcelona along these lines for international maritime transport to select the Mediterranean as an ECA zone, emissions control area as well. Thank you very much for having taken that initiative, which has been upheld by France. It's absolutely essential for us to try to improve the quality of the air around the Mediterranean basin, also with by protecting these assets. And so we have this debate. It's a long-winded effort that is ahead of us. We need to make sure that we're doing something about these very alarming signals, accidental bycatches as well. And we are going to be working hand in hand with Italy and Spain, as we do, to ensure that we have the northwest area of the Mediterranean, which is recognized as a particularly vulnerable area. We really need to ensure that we reduce the speed of vessels and avoid the far too many collisions that take place. And then finally, protection for Posidonia. As you know, these sea weeds are miracles for certain areas in the Mediterranean. They are harbors of biodiversity. They stock carbon. They're extremely fragile ecosystems as well, which are being damaged today, which are suffering from many scourges, many threats to their sustainability, and that should really spur us into action. A number of commitments have been made here too, and at national level we have developed a French strategy to protect all of our sea grasses as well from the effects of vessels by suggesting that by putting in place certain areas for Posidonia to grow, and also by ensuring that there are 20 million euros that are released over a 3-year period for this target. Anyone who hasn't heard that, I'd like to announce that here, to try to support the seagrass growth all across the French coastline. It's very important, as you know, and it affects all areas of the Mediterranean basin. And we've been working as part of a network for 3 years now. Technical support is being provided on a major level to the stakeholders, supported by the National Office for Biodiversity in France, who I would also like to take the opportunity to thank at this stage, with the governments of the Balearic Islands as well around the Mediterranean basin. And indeed, this provides us with a number of models, and I'm sure that the lessons learned will go far beyond the Mediterranean, with working programs as well, which form a framework for action, and all of the countries bordering the Mediterranean are very much invited to join us. But all of this can only serve to improve our knowledge. And we've been listening, we're going to be listening for these few days that we're spending here together in Brest, because there is a lack of knowledge about the Mediterranean and what can be done, what the Mediterranean does for us, such as the oceans, which are essential areas, both where our quality of living is concerned and environmental protection is concerned, given the climate challenges we're facing at the moment. So we're very, very committed to this region, and for the next 2 years that we'll be spending together, next 2 hours rather, we're very interested to hear what will be said. Thank you.
while we invite, in English or in French, our next minister for opening messages and preparing the slides for Tatjana. I'd just like some help for the message of the minister to be passed on the screen. Thank you. Monsieur Hugo Moran.
Mr. Hugo Moran, you have the floor.
Vous nous entendez?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us? Vous nous entendez?
Can you hear us, sir?
On vous entend, Monsieur le Ministre. On vous entend.
We can hear you.
Well, good afternoon. I would like to congratulate France for this initiative and for the opportunity to exchange views on the Mediterranean Sea. I couldn't agree more with the narrative that the Mediterranean Sea is a fragile jewel. It is a valuable resource and an integral part of our economy and identity, a bonding heritage that we share with all the nations in the Med Basin. The protection of the marine environment, reduction of our carbon footprint is an absolute must in our efforts to achieve sustainable blue growth. Cyprus is a maritime nation, and as a minister responsible for maritime transport and the integrated maritime policy, my intervention will also focus on these areas. We are very pleased on the recent submission of the relevant proposal to the IMO for the designation of the Mediterranean Sea as a sulfate oxides emission control area. Cyprus will work towards ensuring that the relevant proposal will be approved and enter into force latest by 1st January 2025. We urge the contracted parties of the Barcelona Convention to start as soon as possible the work for designating a nitrogen oxides emission control area in the Med Sea. Such a proposal is expected to minimize further the emissions from maritime transport, achieving significant health benefits and protecting the marine environment. Within the context of its efforts to effectively address climate change at the regional level, Cyprus has launched an initiative for coordinated climate change actions in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East, aiming to pull together individual actions from amongst the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East countries in order to strengthen regional coordination and cooperation. The initiative aims to develop of a regional action plan considering the specificities and challenges of our region. Under the chairmanship of Cyprus, competent ministers met last week and exchanged views on the structure and content of the regional action plan and on issues of governance, monitoring, and funding. Maritime safety, protection of the environment, and maritime security are persistent priorities for the development of a sustainable blue economy in the Mediterranean. Towards this direction, Cyprus would like to signal the importance of the MOU on port-state control in our joint effort to further promote maritime safety and the protection of the marine environment in the region. In this respect, Cyprus will pursue the involvement of all Med countries, putting forward a concrete proposal to explore the possibility of an enhanced role on this forum. With the support of the European Commission and EMSA, Cyprus invited all the EU member states of the Mediterranean that are members of the Paris MOU on port-state control to also join the Med MOU in order to raise the standards on maritime safety and the protection of the marine environment and to ensure a harmonized approach throughout the Med Basin. Addressing the issue of marine litter and plastic pollution is of particular importance because of the significant environmental impacts of waste on the environment and the effects of marine litter on economic activities. Cyprus addresses the problem of marine litter from land-based sources through the implementation of its waste management policies. Measures are currently taken for the establishment of a nationwide separate collection system for recyclables and organic waste, coupled with some other measures such as the changes on plastic bags and the recent restrictions on single-use plastic products that are expected to contribute significantly to the prevention of marine litter. Plastic pollution is one of the greatest environmental disasters affecting our seas. We warmly support Prince Albert II of Monaco initiative Beyond Plastic Med, and especially we are involved in the BeMed funded project Cruise Ships Against Plastic Pollution in the Mediterranean, which aims to develop solutions that will minimize the use of disposable plastics and improve their management method so that cruise ship sector can grow within the framework of an EU Green Deal, the circular economy, and the blue economy, and contribute to a Mediterranean with less plastic waste. On another note, Cyprus, together with a number of other states, including France and other organizations, co-sponsored a submission at IMO MEPC committee making mandatory the garbage record book for all ships of 100 gross tonnage and above by amending MARPOL Annex 5. In recognizing, Cyprus' national strategy for the integrated maritime policy takes into account the economic, social, cultural, environmental specificities of Cyprus, and it places emphasis on the protection and sustainable use of the marine environment, the development of sustainable marine economy, the enhancement of marine research, knowledge, and innovation. The implementation of this strategy is supported by cross-cutting tools like the integrated coastal zone management and maritime special planning, which are currently under development, aiming to contribute to the protection of the coastal and marine environment, the sustainable development, and to maximize the growth potential of Cyprus's maritime and coastal economies. In Cyprus, marine protected areas have been established, reaching the 19% of its total marine area, contributing in this way substantially towards the target of protection of 30% of the Med Sea. In the coming years, Cyprus will concentrate its efforts in building up sound and well-managed MPAs, including effective surveillance, contributing to a target of strictly protection of 10% of the Med by 2030. The implementation of a holistic approach and a shared responsibility from all the Med countries, the enhanced cooperation, good governance, and the exchange of best practices are important in ensuring the environmental sustainability and effective integration of all the pillars of the blue economy and the protection of the marine environment. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Demetriades, and I'm very sorry for the confusion. You're the shipping deputy minister to the president of Cyprus, and thank you very much for your intervention. I would like to also felicitate and ask His Excellency Mr. Hugo Moran to say a few words of introduction. Mr. Minister, thank you for coming. We thought you would be on a visio, that's why we were confused in the order. It was very appropriate that we were sitting one next to the other. Vous êtes le secrétaire d'État pour l'environnement.
You are the Secretary of State for the Environment and for the Ecological Transition and Democratic Challenge of Spain. First and foremost, I would like to thank the French presidency for having invited me to participate in this workshop on the Mediterranean 2030. Our sea, the Mediterranean Sea, accounts for 1% of all of oceans on the planet. However, it's one of the seas, one of the most fertile seas in the world in terms of marine biology. given its geography and its and the fact that it is almost a landlocked sea, also issues that are very unique. Now we are seeing a decline in the quality of the water in the Mediterranean, given overfishing, given pollution, intense tourism, and excessive shipping are some of the challenges that we face in protecting this sea. Climate change is a global issue, and its effects, of course, can be felt at a local level too. The IPCC report has revealed that the Mediterranean is one of the most vulnerable regions, and we know that our region actually warms up 20% more faster than other regions of the world. And so we need to adapt to this situation. This report and other world reports, global reports, show us or paint a very difficult picture for us for the future. So we need to try and, of course, reduce these pernicious effects on our sea in terms of reducing pollution and fighting against climate change in order to preserve the biodiversity of the Mediterranean. In 1992, we saw a move towards more sustainable forms of transport and also circular economy. These were seen as some of the best ways of fighting against this worsening situation in the Mediterranean. So, right now, this summit, the One Ocean Summit, comes at a crucial moment for us. Indeed, it brings together some of the leading experts in the world and heads of state and government to come up with solutions that will help us to preserve and protect the Mediterranean. We have 10 years, 10 proposals, and one ocean ahead of us. We need to preserve the health of this ecosystem for future generations. And in 2030, we will be at the midway point of work that has already been begun in the past. Thanks to the different protocols that are being developed and the multilateral work that has been done, we are working towards overcoming these major challenges. That is why today, more than ever, we salute the new midterm strategy from 2022 to 2027 that sets out a roadmap for us. And all of this within the context of the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda for 2030. The idea is for the Mediterranean to be considered as a zone for carbon dioxide control. Now, all of this shows that we are making key steps towards protecting this important, this area that is so important to us. Indeed, the idea is to make sure that we can have a sustainable sea, so that politicians at the EU level, with the strategic directive concerning marine spaces and other important EU directives, will help us to protect the Mediterranean. Spain today is renewing its commitment in favour of marine biodiversity, and with the Mediterranean Action Plan up until 2030, that was that has been announced during the One Planet Summit in January last year.
Écologique et le défi démographique de l'Espagne devait arriver à participer. L'Espagne continuera à être à l'avant-garde de ces efforts multilatéraux pour la protection de la biodiversité terrestre et marine, en accord avec les 4 objectifs du plan d'action. 1. Développement des aires protégées pour atteindre l'objectif de 30% d'ici 2030. 2. Élimination progressive de la surpêche, en particulier pour lutter contre la pêche illégale, non déclarée et non réglementée. 3. Interdire les plastiques à usage unique. Et 4. Progresser vers la durabilité du secteur du transport maritime.
Focusing on marine transport, on reducing waste in our oceans, and also on fishing.
Pour la nature et le peuple, à laquelle nous consacrons une partie de notre attention aujourd'hui.
We are also focusing our attentions on the Global Alliance for Oceans. Spain also supports the need to promote sustainable fishing that respects the Mediterranean and its biodiversity. Between now and 2030, we will have to work hand in hand with scientists at an international level so that we can take the necessary steps needed to turn the situation around. So I would call upon all of the experts present here today to work towards this common objective in the short term, mid-term and the long term. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. Now I give the floor to Tatjana, Hema, and we are still in Spain, I can say, because you come from Barcelona. Thank you for having accepted to be a co-chair with our Secretary-General for the Mediterranean Union, and as co-chair, you will have the pleasure, I hope, of wrapping up this first session. We still have an hour ahead of us, but at the end of the day, we are going to try and be as kind as we can with everyone. And so we can have a little bit of time at the end to get some reaction to what has been said during today. This is a seminar. We are not at a UN General Assembly meeting, and it would be good if we could have some recommendations, some calls, some proposals that could then be taken to different forums. You have the floor.
Honorable delegates and colleagues, distinguished speakers and guests, I am delighted to co-chair and moderate this important workshop in the One Summit focusing on the Mediterranean. And we have a very important panel, and I count on the participation of everybody to demonstrate an important, let's say, priorities and action that we need to take in order to implement an ambitious agenda that we all have for the Mediterranean Sea and its coastal region. Just to set the scene with some figures, we all know that Mediterranean is a biodiversity hotspot, represent only 1% of the ocean surface, but 18% of the world biodiversity, out of which 20 to 30% are endemic species. We know that Mediterranean coastal region is home to 1/3 of the entire Mediterranean population. It provides 7% of global demand on energy, 5% global oil reserves, 5% of global CO2 emissions, 11% of global trade, 30% of global tourism, and it's one of the most important navigation routes. Mediterranean is a climate change hotspot and a marine litter hotspot as well, unfortunately. The Mediterranean region has invested in building a complex and a very interesting and demanding and ambitious governance and policy system with many active national, regional, and global actors. All this offers great opportunities to achieve sustainability, effective policy implementation, and regional collaboration among different initiatives, the most recent one being the PAMEX that was launched in IUCN Congress in September, led by France, but with participation of an important Mediterranean government. So this has made Mediterranean to pilot a number of initiatives successfully and become also the reason for triggering them, some of those development at the global level as well. So this is something that we need to capture and to continue to make sure that we continue with implementation of this ambitious agenda for the region. I would like to thank France and our host for inviting this remarkable panel to share their insights on what to do to further work on protecting biodiversity in the Mediterranean and to curb pollution in its various forms. The panel is going organized in a number of sections. I have the honor to start saying some words about the outcome of our last COP that was held in Antalya, Turkey. I was very pleased to hear from both the State Secretary and the Cypriot Minister of some of the decision, which shows how important the work that we have in Antalya is important for our contracting parties, and thank you very much for referring to those decisions. Are you going to put the slide on the screen, or I can go so quickly? The COP in Antalya, the contracting parties meeting in Antalya, was very special. We were prepared for a special agenda, very substantive, demanding and ambitious, because we were given a clear mandate in Naples when we had the previous contracting party meeting, but there were also a number of, new elements that the meeting was held in a COVID in person, in a COVID very difficult period, and it was attended by 300 participants, which is a good number in the usual COP that we have. Very high interest from, of course, our contracting parties, very high interest from our partners, and it showed that the enthusiasm in the Mediterranean is very high, even in time of difficulty. And I would like also to pay tribute to all contracting parties and our partners, but also to Turkey as a host country, which make an exceptional effort to secure all the conditions for organizing such a successful meeting in a very difficult period. We also continued with some new elements that we try to introduce more in the Barcelona Convention system in order to promote youth and women leaders. And we also had the pleasure to have the First Lady of Turkey being with us in order to promote, in particular, the role of women in the Mediterranean. In terms of substance, so could you go to the other slide, please? So these are just to give you the atmosphere of the meeting that was very, very active. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is with the Ministers and the delegation. The COP22 agreed on a very important Antalya declaration that was focused in 4 directions. Switching to a climate resilient, resource efficiency and sustainable Mediterranean, and the intention is to try to promote the circular economy, leading to the next generation of pollution-free and marine litter-free Mediterranean, protect biodiversity, and one of the most important decisions that was taken is the Mediterranean, the strategy of UNEP map for the period 22-27. I don't want to go in much details because the documents are already published, but the intention is for our contracting parties and the Mediterranean government, the partners, to make sure that through the implementation of this midterm strategy, we do achieve a transformational change towards a healthy Mediterranean, as we said, based on the 4 clusters that we did decide, and to secure also the sustainability and the green recovery, including also from the COVID pandemic. Now, in terms of thematic decision, without taking much of your time, the groundbreaking decision on SECA, it was already mentioned. We also had the pleasure that the decision was already, the submission for the SECA was already submitted to the IMO bodies by France on behalf of our contracting parties. We also we are the first region in the world that we decided on a strategic action program to protect biodiversity in full alignment with the ongoing process of the post-2020 biodiversity agenda, with very ambitious and in terms of targets, but also in terms of timing, because we like very much to achieve some concrete results by 2030. The parties also adopted a regional strategy on how to promote further marine protected areas and other management-based areas in the Mediterranean, together with our partners. There were also a number of decisions that further improve the commitment of the countries with regard to the wastewater treatment plan, the sludge management, and in particular to address plastic pollution in the framework of a regional plan on marine litter management that, as you all know, we were the first one in the world, I mean the contracting parties, to develop and to adopt a regional plan with legally binding measures on how to reduce marine litter in the Mediterranean. And this time we included elements related to the plastic, microplastic and plastic pollution as well, inspired also from the Directive of the European Union on the single-use plastic items. So it is very important, and all this commitment bring also a lot of responsibilities and requires a lot of work for implementation and enforcement. Now, these are some slides that shows to you from content-wise, in particular, the decision on the SABIO, Strategic Action Program to protect biodiversity, and this decision on the marine protected areas, because we have committed to an important target, which is 30%. And 30% is not easy to be achieved, and there are quite a lot of challenges, but our parties are committed, and I believe that this workshop will also give some additional insight on the way forward and how all together can work in promoting and supporting the implementation of this important decision that were taken by the last meeting of the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention. Could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, and this is what I said about the SABIO. It was prepared in a close collaboration with the contracting parties in spite of the COVID situation with a bottom-up approach. So we did this together with our country's government and partners. Next slide, please. And it has a vision to 2050, a mission to 2030, goals for 2030 to be in line with the CBD agenda and sustainable development goals, concrete targets and actions. Very quickly, please, the next slide. So now it's not just to show that it's very clear that we need to have marine biodiversity valued, conserved, restored, and wisely used. The other slide, please. By 2030, start to reverse the loss of biodiversity and put the Mediterranean marine and coastal biodiversity on the path to recovery for the benefit of nature and people. The next slide. So 3 goals. In fact, we didn't, originally it was the idea to put it on the knowledge, but we said that, yeah, knowledge is very important, it's part of it, but we wanted to have a very clear goal, reduce the threats to biodiversity, ensure biodiversity is preserved and maintained, and enable the necessary transformative change, putting in place tools and solutions for implementation and mainstreaming. And I'll come a little bit later on that. And then the targets, there are plenty of targets, and this is a decision on the SECA. Just to show, I'm not taking your time on this, it's a very important decision that we believe that will bring a lot of benefits from the environmental and socio-economic perspective to the entire Mediterranean region and even to the global level, because it will reduce the impact of climate change. And as we said, decisions to be taken are not easy to be negotiated, but the most difficult part is their implementation, and we are here all committed to make sure and to support our government partners, civil society, in order to contribute to their implementation. So I thank you for this, and I'll try to be short because I know that we are running out of time and I have to give opportunity to our panel members in order to respond to a number of questions. So thank you very much for that. Now we go to the panel.
At this stage, I think we can applaud. And as I promised you, I would support.
Yes, please.
And request Guillaume Sainteny, the President, Président du Plan Bleu, si vous voulez bien.
President of Plan Bleu, if you would like to take the floor, or however you wish, to present to us both the Plan Bleu and also to give your reactions and your introduction to this topic, which is one of your plans. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to Tatjana for her presentation as well. It was very comprehensive. The Plan Bleu is based in Marseille. It's a regional activity center which is under the aegis of the PNU. And I've been asked to speak in a very short amount of time, 2 minutes, about protecting biodiversity in the Mediterranean, even if it's not the Plan Bleu's primary activity. The question that has been asked is about protecting the Mediterranean and the increased need for protected marine areas. Now, I think that we can change the question around somewhat and talk about the need to protect the Mediterranean. It goes without saying, I don't need to repeat all of the figures that you've heard. It's a hotspot for biodiversity. It has extremely high levels of biodiversity, but perhaps we could say a few words about the threats, the risks hanging over the Mediterranean. We've had certain species that are under threat that have already been mentioned, but since 1970, we've seen about 68% of species disappeared, and 20% of beaches and dunes have been transformed into infrastructure. So that's within the space of 50 years. Obviously, the causes of this are the development of coastal areas with strong urbanization, overfishing or illegal fishery activities, various extraction platforms, whether we're talking about fossil fuels, but now we also have wind energy at the sea, which has problems of its own. And also, there's the impact of noise as well, submarine noise on flora and fauna, which has been underestimated. If I can sum up, it seems to me that we have the necessary conditions in place, but not necessarily enough to preserve the biodiversity in the Mediterranean basin. On the one hand, we have about 11 protected areas around the Mediterranean, but we're more or less in line with the objectives set. But there are more and more scientific studies that show that we're seeing repopulation of fisheries in neighboring areas, which is positive. But firstly, these areas are very poorly distributed around the Mediterranean. There are more in the north, fewer in the south. Many of them don't have effective management plans with them, and we have less than 0.1% of these protected areas, which are not fully being put into practice as protected areas. They're merely on paper. The other problem is that there are many problems of the environment that aren't covered by these protected areas. It doesn't protect against certain forms of pollution, plastic pollution, for one example, illegal fishing, etc. By very definition, it doesn't protect against illegal fishing. Accidental forms of pollution aren't protected either. And then there's also the problem of submarine noise levels as well. Obviously, there's the direct sound if you have a vessel passing overhead, but these shockwaves can be sensed over a long distance. And there are other measures as well, such as a very important decision that was adopted at the December COP on areas in the Mediterranean, which was a historic decision. And it's been very comforting to see that, given the current context, which is many countries are grappling with problems of various forms at the moment. And so it's good to see that they came up with these decisions. There are huge benefits for health, but also for biodiversity, which go far beyond these protected areas. I'd also like to say that as far as Mediterranean biodiversity is concerned, it's not just in the MPAs. We need to protect biodiversity elsewhere as well. A few things here. Firstly, I think that one of the most problematic things is that we have huge gaps in our knowledge about Mediterranean biodiversity, where it is the exact mapping exercises of flora, fauna, habitats, and then lower levels of knowledge as well about the south of the Mediterranean when compared to the north. There's a very imperfect knowledge that we have on certain types of lesser-known biodiversity. There's not enough knowledge, quite simply. And one of the things that we could ask for, and we were asked to formulate messages here, I think one thing that we could ask for is a full mapping exercise of biodiversity across the Mediterranean. I believe that all countries could come around that by 2030, 2040. We can't really do much without it. Recently, I was looking through some files on wind farm projects. And we see that the impact studies are done precisely because we don't really know what effects they're going to have on certain species. So if you don't know that, you then can't choose the one that will have the lowest impact. That's a big problem. The second point is we have a protocol in place, which is called a Specially Protected Species Protocol. It's been in place for a few years now, and biological diversity was added to it. So in general, this sets out a number of principles. One is that endangered or threatened species in their habitats are protected or under protection. Therefore, that is an internationally recognized status that the biodiversity is considered protected, even if it's not within the context of an MPA. And then the final point, and perhaps I can conclude here, I believe that there is a major priority for the Mediterranean. And we're speaking about it less at the moment because we're speaking about the high seas. But what about coastal areas? They are extremely important. Firstly, because of the ecosystems that they harbour, and they're very fragile as well, because they are the ones that feel the brunt of the pressure wherever it comes from. And also, that is where the pressure on the sea stems from. When ports are being built, all sorts of pollution, maritime traffic, fisheries, etc., everything comes from there. And therefore, I believe that we have to look at coastlines. That needs to be given priority status. And that is also what the Integrated Management Protocol aims to do as part of the Barcelona Protocol. The fact that we cannot manage coastal areas without maritime areas means that you have to have clear definitions of which is which. And I recall that this protocol is the first one to have been signed on coastal areas at international level, which sets it out as being extremely important. So MPAs, all very well, but not enough of themselves.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. Now I would like to give the floor to two panelists. The first one is Mr. Bernard Fautrier. He's the advisor of His Excellency Prince Albert III. And he will speak about the way on how to promote further funding and supporting of marine protected areas. I understand that it will be an online presentation, and then it will be our dear colleague from NGOs, who is very, very active in the field of marine protected area, Purificació. And the intention is to try to see what we can do to further build the capacities of different stakeholders and how to recapitalize on the great achievement, because even that we say that there is a lot to be done and we are aware that there have to be done more, there is already in place despite of difficulties that we have. So how we can further recapitalize on this experience and to achieve our own very ambitious objective ahead of us. So we'll have the Mr. Fautrier first to speak? Okay. Ashok. Where are they? Now I'm responsible to moderate, but this stuff, Ashok, where is he? Okay, maybe, can you start just to avoid, okay, thank you very much.
C'est bon? Yeah. Tout d'abord,
first and foremost, thank you to France for inviting me to this event.
Please.
I'm
going to change to English because, in fact, all of my notes are in English, so it's going to be better.
And well, it has been great to listen at the key speakers, keynote speakers, because you provide the perfect background for what I want to explain. And also, Guillaume, you present the key figures today for the marine protected areas in the Mediterranean. But I will ask the controllers if they can show my slide, because I think it will be good for the public to have the current map, which is not the perfect map, but is the current map that's as good as we can have. So this map comes from the status report that is done every 4 years by the SPARAC, which is one of the regional activity centers of the Barcelona Convention with MedPAN. And it shows the figures that is, as Guillaume said, it's 8.3% of the Mediterranean, with only 0.04% of strong protection. So this is very significant. And what it's more obvious is that the distribution is not really well balanced. So 90% of the marine protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures in the Mediterranean are in European Union waters. So that's obvious, that's something that needs to be addressed if we really want to have a common sea well protected. So, and then also they are mainly coastal, so that means that you already said, Guillaume, that we are protecting mainly the shallow waters, but for instance, for pelagic ecosystems, there are very few actions of protection. And this affects also the kind of ecosystems. For instance, Posidonia and Coralligenus are more relevant in terms of this protected surface, but other ecosystems are not. So, but this is regarding the figures in the map. And we can also, we should think that we have 8.3 protected, but that means that we have also 91.7 not protected. And this is not the worst, because the worst is that this 8.3 is supposedly protected. When we look at the management quality, this is far from the optimal to be effective. And this interferes in the political will to designate new MPAs, because when people see a new MPA, and if you don't put enough resources to really show the value of a good protection, then becomes something that is just restrictive, and people react because only see the negative side. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to the management, and that's one of the roles of MedPAN, the Mediterranean Networks of MPA Managers, that was created by managers themselves, because they were feeling that they were very isolated from the conservation world, from the protected areas world. This is quite specific comparing to terrestrial. And in 2009, after an experience of networking through a project of the World Bank, they decided to create the permanent network, and they found MedPAN. There were only 9 MPAs, and today we have more than 100, and we have partners and members in all the countries of the Mediterranean. So I think it's only Syria now is not participating, but all the others, they have some way, some connection with MedPAN. So what's the role of MedPAN? Because this is, I think, it's interesting for the session. So the role of MedPAN is mainly supporting good management. And how can we support management? So when we do this status report, we launched a survey that was responded by 80 different MPAs. Only 6 of them report to have enough staff to implement their management plan. If we consider that only half of them have a management plan that is in process of being implemented, so that really shows the reality. And one part of this is because there is not enough funds, so that's a budgetary issue. But another is sometimes that the skills are not neither specific for the management. So you can have an university degree, but not necessarily you can arrive to an MPA and take the right action. So some additional training and capacity building is needed. So this is part of the role of MedPAN, enable the conditions for those managers learn from each other, prepare specifically on different topics. I will not enter on this, but also to connect them, because what the ocean shows us is the connection exists, and without this connection, we lose the value of biodiversity. And it's exactly the same for human communities. We need to be connected, and the managers really ask for that. So we help them to be connected, and we help them to connect not only in the community of managers, but also with other key institutions. We work very closely with the Barcelona Convention and the different regional activity centers. We work with key NGOs such as the WWF, as well as at AUCN, and many others, sometimes at local or, let's say, national level. And I will stress from this cooperation in the Mediterranean, targeting MPAs and including a specific focus on management, the organization of the last Mediterranean Forum of MPAs, last November, December in Monaco. I'm sure that Monsieur Fautrier will talk a little bit more on that. But I think this is a great example because we had 3 editions. The first one in 2012 in Antalya, a second one in Tanger in Morocco, and the last one in Monaco. And it gathers a huge community of people involved on that. And this consists on 3 days. Well, the last one was not 3 days, was near 3 years with the pandemic. We were organizing a lot of online previous exchanges, but at the end, we deliver the Mediterranean roadmap for MPAs, that in this case is the post-2020, and it's very important because it includes also the objectives of the Barcelona Convention as well as the objectives of the CBD, even if now they are not yet approved, but we really hope that this 30 by 30, well, at least for the Mediterranean, we already have this 30 by 30 target. So, but this target includes not only the designation, but includes a proper management, includes the connectivity, and this requires a lot of human efforts at the ground level, and is there where the network really, really helps. So for doing that, we work internally, obviously in the Mediterranean, with key partners, but we work as well with other actors outside of the Mediterranean, because as the title of this conference, there is only one ocean. And one ocean requires one vision, one common vision. So we support national networks in the Mediterranean, in France, in Spain, in Croatia, in every country that really wants to develop. We help them to organize themselves. But we also exchange with networks in other regions. For instance, in West Africa, there is a network, in the Caribbean, in North America, in the Patagonian area. And this is thanks to a European Union project that initially was targeting just the transatlantic cooperation. Now it's targeting as well cooperation with Southeast Asia. Is the EU Ocean Governance Project from the Foreign Policy Instrument. And it has been a great experience. And I want to share this because I think it's the right place to share these global experiences, but also have benefits at the regional and at the national levels, because this is about this connecting different layers of action. So we had the opportunity to exchange with these other networks plus national networks, the ones in France and Spain, but also North America, Mexico, Colombia, República Dominicana, and Uruguay and Senegal. And it's great when you can hear from the community-managed areas, protected areas in Senegal, and at the same time working with the NOAA and exchanging all together how this may go from a community to a national level, to a regional level, to exchange them with Southeast Asia. And MedPAN is learning a lot, and we contribute obviously with the Mediterranean experience that I must say that it's quite useful for others. So I think this innovation is crucial at this moment. And just to finalize, let me talk about another level of innovation that is not just from MedPAN, is also the MedFund, and Monsieur Fautrier probably will add something. But I think it's innovative because it's a new GEF project together between a trust fund, which is the MedFund, and a network, a regional network of marine protected areas. And why is this innovative? Because we get these funds from the GEF to do 2 things that are crucial. Funds for management through the MedFund, and funds for capacity building of the managers together. And this is a model of cooperation that didn't exist, and now in the context of the Ocean Governance Project, we create a global alliance between networks of managers, regional networks, and trust funds in different areas of the world, joining forces. So this example of the GEF in the Mediterranean with the MedFund can really trigger a change and showing that we can really find many, many options to do things together. And that's what I wanted to share with all of you, because I have no more time. But I think that we need to work a little bit out of our boxes. So that we know quite well what we do at home, but there is only one ocean, there is only one human community in the world, but with with a diversity of ways of doing things, and this connecting everything that we can find the solutions. And in this case, working outside, it helps especially for migratory species. How can you manage migratory species that move across the Atlantic and comes to the Mediterranean, all in the Mediterranean? So we need to do this, and I really appreciate opportunities like this one to discuss and show those examples. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We have space for some question or discussion from the floor.
We'll go immediately to Monaco, if that's all right with you,
Very
because
good.
he's been waiting, Bernard Fautrier, and now I think the technical issues have been resolved. So we go straight, if you're okay, Tatjana, from MedPlan to the MedFund. Monsieur le Ministre.
Bonsoir.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Bonsoir Tatjana, bonsoir chers amis.
Hello, Tatjana, dear friends, ocean lovers and lovers of the Mediterranean. I hope that you can hear me. And sorry for the failures earlier. It wasn't me, it was the technology that let us down. So Monaco is just one country that is, of course, concerned by the situation of the Mediterranean. And indeed, we are concerned about this within the framework of regional and international cooperation, of course. Indeed, with our French and Italian friends, more recently for a large mammal sanctuary in the western area of Mediterranean. However, more concretely, I want to speak to you about two initiatives that Monaco is involved in with other partners. For example, the development of MPAs. Guillaume spoke about this earlier. In the Mediterranean, we believe that there's about 8% of the Mediterranean that is covered by MPAs, but of this 8%, in fact, it's only an MPA on paper. They lack the financial clout to make a difference, and there's no real management plan in place. So I believe that science has shown us how important it is to protect these areas. They are extremely important when it comes to protecting biodiversity, and they also have human and financial for me to make sure that the human and financial resources that we dedicate to them are up to the challenge. We also know that these areas can have mitigating effects when it comes to climate change. So, for the last 7 years, we've been working on a project that was set up with Mr. François Hollande, the French president, so we could develop marine protected areas in the Mediterranean. Monaco and France were also joined by Morocco much later, and indeed this led to the creation of a fund for creating MPAs. Now, of course, states, multilateral organizations and private actors started to dedicate funds to this fund, and indeed the resources are then re-injected back into the project. Now, after the partnership with the MAVA organization, we also set up a strong and comprehensive form of protection in an MPA area. Now, I'm not going to go into details as to regards to what defines strong and comprehensive protection as opposed to other types of MPA. However, at the end of 2021, there was a report that showed there were 4 different types of MPA, including one that is highly intense or strong, comprehensive protection. And that is to say that it exists for marine biology that is in need of comprehensive and intense protection. We have so far received 3 candidatures for this type of MPA. The fund has 2.8 million euros, and Tunisia, Morocco, Turkey, Libya are involved in this project, and over the next 5 years, we hope to have 7 MPAs of this type. I had a slide regarding this, but we want to support 7 MPAs And we hope that by 2025, we will have around 20 MPAs of this type. Now, this support is granted to local organizations and NGOs and national agencies in charge of marine protection. And this helps to ensure the long-term activities of these different stakeholders in protecting these areas, covering around 7,000 square kilometers. Now, indeed, we know that plastic pollution is one major issue, with hundreds of millions of tons of plastic waste thrown into the sea every year. To face up to this, in 2015, an initiative was set up, not only with the support of organizations in Monaco, but also elsewhere. And BeMed is what came out of this. 2 million euros has been mobilized for these different actions, for example, on the ground, finding alternatives to plastic pollution and also innovative ways of cleaning up this type of pollution. And there are around 69 projects that have stemmed from around 15 countries. Secondly, the creation of a network so that there can be best practice sharing when it comes to the different actions and the impact of actions in the different areas. And a project that dates back 2 years, we also started focusing on those who are accountable for this pollution. And now we have a college of businesses with companies as big as Nestlé, Chanel, Carrefour, etc. And they are accompanied by a scientific advisory board that makes recommendations to them. And indeed, the idea is to try and get rid of a volume of pollution that is the equivalent of the size of Marseille. So these are some of the projects that we have set up to improve the situation in the Mediterranean. I thank you for your attention.
Mr. Fautrier, it's always a pleasure to hear you speak about marine protected areas. A big thank you to Monaco and to your personal involvement in promoting this agenda in the Mediterranean. As we said, we will have some opportunity for little interaction at the end of the workshop on this topic. I believe that you heard quite a lot on what we have achieved and what are the challenges ahead of us in order to implement what the Mediterranean region is already committed with regard to this issue. Let's go now to the second topic, a very interesting and important one for our region, the fight against marine pollution, and especially plastic pollution, and of course the pollution from sea-based sources. We have invited 3 panelists here. I'll start with Pascal Bertrand, the CEO of CEREMA. Nice meeting you. To speak about how you see your work in this direction. And then it will be Mr. Patrick Child, the Deputy Director of DG Environment of the European Commission, and then Gabino Gonzales, the Head of REMPEC, Center of UNEP MAP and IMO, responsible to support the countries for the implementation of the protocol and on seabed pollution, combating seabed pollution. Please, Mr. Pascal, you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I've prepared some slides.
I don't know if you have the slides.
Yes.
Yeah. It comes. Yeah. Ah, ok. Bien, bonjour, bonjour à tous. Je voudrais
Good afternoon, everyone.
vous raconter une belle histoire pour les techniciens et les scientifiques que nous sommes. C'est justement d'une étude qui a été appropriée par les décideurs et qui a justement fait l'objet de décisions à la
and on the basis of which a number of decisions were made on the Barcelona Convention in December. When it started out, this was a study that was carried out by a number of organizations to try to look at sulfur oxide oxide emissions caused by vessels. We have a range of different skills that were put into the study. We have firstly a detailed description of ship traffic. That's what we were able to do within CEREMA based on the data that we received. And we were given a whole plethora of different data sets looking at speeds of ships, of their emissions, and we worked with our friends at CETEPA together to translate that data into emissions by looking at the different characteristics of ships and how they related to the different data sets. And then together with our friends at Cenaris, we came up with a number of scenarios looking at where the pollutants were being concentrated. On the basis of those scenarios, a number of decisions can then be made on vessels. So a great deal of work has been done together with our friends from the Plan Bleu about the way in which we can work and bringing all stakeholders together. But that in those words, it might seem very straightforward. But, as the next slide will show, it requires a large volume of data to be handled. There are a number of very complex algorithms involved, and behind it, of course, the real difficulty is trying to bring all of the different skill sets around one table to work with this data and to try to come up with a number of models which are as realistic as possible. The interesting thing was that on the basis of this, we could test out a number of scenarios by looking at how ship traffic was evolving and also looking at the 2020 legislation in place, which allowed us to reduce NO2 emissions considerably. So it is a nice story, as I've said. So how did it all start? Given that we are scientists, this is something extremely satisfying for us to see. And next slide, please, says the speaker.
S'est emparé de ces résultats. Il y a eu beaucoup de discussions.
There were many discussions that took place around this at the COP22 and also in the context of the Barcelona Convention about whether to designate the Mediterranean area a SECA, a control area. The story doesn't stop there because there are going to be more discussions taking place in June, but really what I wanted to do was to talk about the problems that we face as technical organizations. But I would like to start by thanking the political authorities because a lot of work had to be done there as well, decision-making notably, and I think it's very satisfying and it bodes well for the future.
But the decision maker would not have taken this decision without a number of studies that have been undertaken by countries, by MAP as well, and this brought the necessary arguments for the decision makers to take this very important decision. Thank you very much for your work, and we look forward also to work in the NOx, preparing the ground when time will come for the policymakers to take the right decision in due time. Mr. Patrick, now the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here and want to thank first the French presidency for organising this summit in such difficult and challenging circumstances, but making sure that we can all come together. And it's a great pleasure and honour for me to be here speaking on behalf of DG Environment in the European Commission about our vision for the Mediterranean, free from all forms of pollution, especially pollution from plastics. Because I think, around the Mare Nostrum, we share cultural, natural resources, trade, but also, regrettably, the pollution challenges that affect our densely populated region and its hugely fragile marine environment. And so as we come together in a sort of an ideal moment between the landmark decisions on preserving nature at the COP in Glasgow, and as we prepare for the Biodiversity COP we hope later this year, this One Ocean Summit really is a magnificent opportunity to send a really powerful message about the attention that we want to give to the marine environment, to its protection, to biodiversity, and also this vital question about the fight against pollution at, below and above sea level. And so in this context, I'd like to make three brief comments, three brief messages, because I know time is short. Firstly, to talk a little bit about how the European Union is seeking to address the challenges of marine litter, in particular plastics. Secondly, how that fits into our broader agenda for zero pollution and the Zero Pollution Action Plan that the Commission recently presented. And thirdly, and what we've heard a lot of today, the vitally necessary contribution that we need to deliver from international action, particularly through some of the very successful regional organizations that we were hearing from today. So firstly, I mean, marine litter, of course, affects all of our economic activities, tourism, fisheries, but it also brings a huge burden in terms of the cleaning costs, involving many different actors, industry, the fishing communities, NGOs, administrations, at all levels in the countries around the Mediterranean. And so we need really education of all these different actors towards new consumption patterns with responsible societal attitudes. Of course, we need more information, but on the basis of the information we already have, there is obviously a screaming need for urgent action to tackle pollution, particularly in the Mediterranean. And here, European legislation has a role to play. And I'd just like to highlight in particular the very important contribution that we see from the recently adopted Single-Use Plastics Directive, adopted, as we all know, in record time by the European Union decision-making, which seeks really profoundly to change the way that we design, produce, and dispose of plastic products. And I would like just in particular to highlight the upstream dimension. And we're used to dealing with the downstream cleaning up and managing of waste, but actually changing the way that we produce and consume plastics is the vital new dimension that this single-use plastics directive brings, and which I believe is a really powerful source of inspiration for many different actors and countries around the world. And that brings me back to my second point, which is about how this all fits into our zero pollution agenda more generally, and as part of course, the European Green Deal, which is the key sort of overarching growth strategy of the von der Leyen Commission. And in this context, our Zero Pollution Action Plan has put forward some pretty specific and very bold objectives, specifically about plastics, reducing plastic litter and microplastics by 50% for plastic litter, 30% for microplastics by 2030. And I think that the sort of regulatory thresholds that we're establishing at European level, for example, for marine litter, member states agreed that there should be no more than 20 litter items found in 100 meters of coastline. Very practical, easily measurable targets, which I think not only at a European level, but more generally in the Mediterranean and globally, we can subscribe to. But beyond legislation, there are other things that we're doing at a European level. And I would just like to pick up what some people have said about the importance of science innovation. My previous responsibilities being in our Directorate-General for Research and Innovation and our framework program Horizon Europe, which has within it one of the new sort of flagship missions, a specific sort of network of activities around oceans and waters. And we believe that this will play a really fundamental role in supporting our biodiversity strategy with a specific lighthouse project dedicated to the Mediterranean. And I'm really happy that this is a good opportunity, and colleagues from DG Research and Innovation will be speaking about this, I'm sure, on other occasions. But I know time is short. My last point, the importance of international collaboration. And I think we all recognize here that no regional organization, no individual state will achieve what we need to working by themselves. We are proud of the successes of the Barcelona Convention. Many people have spoken about the MEDECA and the work we've done recently in Antalya on sulfur oxides. I'm very much looking forward to working with the French presidency as we take now this to the global level in the IMO, and the vote of support that we've had from other EU member states and the Secretary of State from Spain in particular, to make sure we can carry this through the meetings at the political level in June, and then we hope for adoption later in December. And I'd just like to conclude with one even larger dimension, which is the upcoming UNEP 5 assembly in Nairobi in a few weeks' time, where we are joining forces with many other partners around the world to launch negotiations, we hope, on an international global convention on plastics. And what we're seeking in particular to achieve, and that's why I underlined the point earlier, is to bring out this upstream dimension of a global agreement on how we produce and consume plastics in a circular way to avoid the waste flowing into our oceans. Of course, combined with all the different actions that we're already engaged in at a global level, all under a single umbrella. And I think the example of the project you mentioned earlier of how working together we can really inspire the global community behind the sort of objectives that we have is really powerful. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Mediterranean Sea is an area rich in history and culture, and for centuries has played a critical role in our lives in shipping and trade. But it's also a fragile and closed sea, and I think this seminar reflects the shared passion that we have to address fundamentally some of the urgent pollution challenges, whether plastics or more generally. And the message that we're sending from this One Ocean Summit to the global community, I believe, is extremely timely and extremely powerful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you very much. Yeah, European Union is a very important ally in all the work that we do in the region, and I'm sure that you also play a very important role for the global agenda as well. And thank you for also referring to the global negotiation on this new plastic instrument, because in our COP in Antalya, all our contracting parties, they gave a strong support to those negotiations in order to make sure that this decision hopefully will go through at the next UNEP. Thank you very much for that. And then I would like to invite Gabino Gonzales, from the head of REMPEC, to make his own intervention on the strategy that was adopted by the last COP to combat pollution from ships. Gabino, you are there, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Tatjana, and distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank the French presidency to allow our participation to this important event. Next slide, please. Allow me first to introduce the Regional Marine Pollution Emergency Response Center for the Mediterranean Sea, REMPEC, administered by the International Maritime Organization, which was established in the framework of the Mediterranean Action Plan of the Barcelona Convention. Over the last 45 years, REMPEC has played a central role in the region by coordinating UNEP and IMO efforts to support Mediterranean coastal states in meeting regional and global targets. This coordination role is now further anchored following the adoption of the Mediterranean Strategy for the Prevention of, Preparedness and Response to Marine Pollution from Ships, 2022-2031, by the 22nd meeting of the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention last December. Third slide, please. I can see we're still on the first one. By adopting the strategy, the contracting parties committed to take individual and collective effective measures to address a range of environmental challenges, including pollution, climate change, emission of harmful gases, marine litter, and the introduction of non-indigenous species. The strategy is not only a response to the environmental challenges, but also a driver of green maritime transport that undergirds a wider sustainable blue economy in the Mediterranean. This is part of a broader endeavor undertaken by UNEP, IMO, and the contracting parties to address the triple crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss in the Mediterranean, while accelerating the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. To illustrate the power of the cooperation offered by the Barcelona Convention, IMO, and REMPEC, allow me to join your excellencies in celebrating the historical adoption by COP22 of the proposal to designate the entire Mediterranean Sea as a sulfur oxide emission control area, the implementation of which is embedded in the strategy. I can confirm today that REMPEC, in collaboration with its partner, will continue supporting these regional efforts. Should the proposal be considered favorably in June this year by the IMO MEPC, the MEDSOC-SICA would come with a raft of benefits. It would mean a significant reduction in shipping a negative effect on human health through lowering emission of sulfur oxide and fine particulate matter, avoiding 1,000 premature deaths due to lung cancers, cardiovascular illness and stroke, as well as more than 2,000 cases of childhood asthma. It would also contribute to reduce acidification and reduce harm to crops, forests, and aquatic species that will be cherished for generations to come. Last slide, please. A comprehensive action plan translating the strategy into 190 specific actions will be implemented in the course of the next 10 years, with the collaborative, coordinated, and collective support from relevant stakeholders in the Mediterranean. This will coincide with a shift in global momentum marked by the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. To conclude, I invite governments, regional and international organizations, NGOs, research institutions, and the industry to join the collaborative platform offered by the strategy to leverage the financial resources and technical support required for the full implementation of the strategy. Together, we can build sustainable partnership and channel international cooperation and maximize synergies in the region. To spread the word, today we are launching a promotional video, which I invite you to disseminate through your network. Thank you for your attention, and see you in November for the first strategy coordination meeting.
Thank you very much, Gabino. So we are going to watch the video now. Is the video ready? Video?
Yes.
Yeah. It's coming.
So it seems it's not working. I think we have to do
After?
a transition, and maybe, to keep us still standing and listen to the conclusions of Secretary-General Nasser Kamel, to accelerate a little bit, because the video is not working. Is that right? Ça marche pas là.
What do we do? We continue with the next session?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Now we go to a very interesting topic, extremely important for the resilience and sustainability of our sea. It is ensuring sustainable fishing while contributing to biodiversity conservation. And we have three distinguished panelists for this. The first one is Charlina Vitcheva, Director-General at European Commission, Directorate-General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. The second one is Dr. Miguel Bernard, Senior Fishery Officer, Policy Officer at the GFCM, and Giuseppe Di Carlo, Director of WWF Coordination in the Mediterranean. So please, Ms. Charlina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I start by passing my congratulations also to the French presidency. It is a real pleasure to be at the spot where ocean is the focus. And this is the focus of DG Mare of the European Commission. And I'm really happy to speak on behalf of the Directorate-General for Maritime Policy and Fisheries. Talking about sustainable fisheries. We need it, it is possible, and we are doing it. It is difficult because I have to confess that when you're on the environmental side, it's very easy. In order to keep the environment clean, you can really put aside the sectors, economic sectors that are there playing a very important role for the viability of the communities. Speaking about the sectoral policy, we have three pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and economic. So as I've said, it is possible, but it is difficult, and we have to find the right balance. Moreover, we have to keep our fisheries. We have to keep our fishermen employed because they keep us with the supply of very important quality food for our table. This is the food that supplies a very quality protein, and if we have to measure the carbon emissions behind, this is probably the protein with the lowest carbon footprint. So it is very complex, but as I've said, we are in a very structured process, and I will start by when all it started. It's not too far in the past. It started in 2017 when Fish Forever declaration, Med Declaration was adopted. And there was a huge political commitment behind this process with a 10-year roadmap. We are in the middle, and I think that the results are already visible. I will start also by saying that the organization that stands behind is the GFCM. It is a very important progress that we witnessed there. And since 2017, there were 70 recommendations that have been adopted. All of them very, very important for the conservation, for keeping biodiversity, for keeping a good track of the protection effort in the Mediterranean. And 35 out of these 70 were adopted last November, so at the annual meeting in 2021. So we see that the historical momentum is picking up, and that's why I'm saying that we are doing a lot. Now, what has been done by GFCM in the recent years? First of all, regional cooperation has been strengthened substantially. We have subgroups, 5 subgroups, where the tailor-made approach is being implemented. We have small-scale fisheries at the core. We have also multi-annual management plans, and just to recall that in the last annual meeting, there was the first ever multi-annual plan that was adopted for the Adriatic, for the small pelagics, and immediately after, in December, it has been translated into the first actions by the European legislation, and it was agreed by the European Ministers for Fisheries. So despite the difficulties, we are walking the talk. Then what has been also done was that the scientific process behind, because many of you have been talking about the scientific advice as the evidence-based policy making, it has been strengthened substantially. And then I shouldn't miss the new strategy that has been designed for sustainable aquaculture. So there is a lot going on there, and if we have to talk about results, we see the first results that since 2017 we have already a reduced fish mortality by at least more than 15%. So that is probably not as bold, knowing from where we start, but this already encourages all the effort forward. Now, what I would like also to say is that the European Union is not only providing the leadership behind, because these 35 recommendations that I was talking about in the GFCM, they were designed and proposed by the European Union, by the European Commission. But also, we are walking the talk at home. We have the first ever West Mediterranean multi-annual plan for the demersal fisheries. It started in 2019. And despite all the difficulties, and you have to be present in the December Council in Brussels to see what I mean by difficulty, we have managed to reduce the fishing effort by 23.5% since 2019. These are 3 years, even 2 years, I would say, and this is a huge effort, and we have to recognize it. This year also, we are applying a much more integrated approach. So it's not only reducing the fishing effort for the trawling capacity, which is this 23.5% so far, but also we establish the ground to start the reduction of the longliners fishing effort. We also applied catch limitations, catch limits for the most overfished species. These are the deep water shrimps, for example. So we are trying our best not only to apply measures, but also new measures and innovative approaches which are evolving on the basis of how the impact and the results are assessed in the meantime. And talking about MPAs and fisheries restricted areas, I have to say that, and I was very happy to see the map, the European Union is really the avant-garde. More than 90% are in our waters, with a lot of engagement of the fishermen as well. And I have to say that one of the examples of Pomu-Jabuka pit, it really delivers results, and not only the results for the environment, but it shows to our fishermen that by doing that, they can increase their profitability, because the spillover effect around is already visible. Talking about funding, I was listening very carefully. There is a European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund that is now in its programming period. So it is now the moment that we have to, we need concerted efforts to plan the right measures there. And there is a lot of funding there available exactly to support the implementation of the MPAs and FRA, the fishing restricted areas. So please use this opportunity. Participate in the consultation process in the various member states for the programming exercise, because it's now the time. And I'm really, I'm short of time, but I have to mention two more things. We are now in preparation of the action plan for conservation of fisheries resources and for the protection of marine ecosystems. The consultation has been out. Now we are analyzing the evidence, and we will come up together with the colleagues from DG Environment with a sound recommendation set about what to do and how to link our activity with protecting biodiversity. And my last, as I promised to last, I have to really commend what we are doing now with research, with the big research program, the Mission Ocean, and the lighthouses behind. It's not only that we have the Mediterranean lighthouse, which is dedicated to restricting pollution, but also there is a lot of science behind. And our president, the President von der Leyen, will be announcing the advancement of one of the key enablers of Mission Ocean, which is Digital Twin Ocean. With a lot of data, probably the mapping will be done there under this project. So we have to pull together all the knowledge, and we have to fill all the knowledge gaps through this project. So happy to be here. Sorry to have so much limited time.
Thank you very much, Charlina, for the information and for the great work that you are doing, and opportunities offered definitely for the Mediterranean as well. We are looking forward to collaborate together. And now, Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tatjana, and thank you very much, Mr. Vitcheva, for the very nice words and the very nice summary of achievements in the last years in the GFCM. I have a single slide to show today, and mainly I just wanted to focus a little bit in the future, what is coming from the GFCM and from the countries of the GFCM to address these challenges. First of all, we have heard today a lot about the combined pressures from human activities into the ecosystems. One very important message here is that these pressures are also directly affecting jobs, and they are directly having a negative impact on food security. And this is what we really need to address as an organization. And this is what I'm going to be talking today a little bit about. We have a new strategy, the GFCM 2030 strategy. I don't know if we can see the slide of this strategy. I'm gonna continue while the slide come up. This strategy is organized in 5 different axes, and it tries to address all of the different challenges that we have in the interaction between fisheries and aquaculture and the marine environment. So the first axis of this strategy, which is about fisheries and ecosystem, have a very clear number of objectives. The first one is to have more and better management plans that allow the fishing capacity in the Mediterranean to be adjusted to the productivity of the natural resources. It has an objective to implement fishery-restricted areas, and Mrs. Vitcheva has already spoken a little bit about them. Fishery-restricted areas are very efficient tools to address both the minimization of any negative impact on vulnerable marine ecosystems, but also the increase of the productivity of natural resources. So as such, they act both as a biodiversity conservation measures and also as a way to improve and enhance food productivity. The third of the main objectives inside this first axis is to improve fishery selectivity and reduce any kind of negative impact on vulnerable species, what we usually overall call bycatch. And all of these activities, we are already advancing quite a lot. As Mrs. Vitcheva has said, in the last 5 years, we have adopted 10 management plans, and we have adopted 5 restricted areas. What is important is that one of these restricted areas, for example, the Jabuka Pomopit that was mentioned here before, has clearly already proven that it results not only in an improvement on the productivity of fisheries, but in the conservation of vulnerable species. There is clearly an improvement and an enhancement of the number of elasmobranchs, not only inside the area, but in the surroundings. And more than that, there is a clear management plan and a clear monitoring plan to prove what is going to be the advantages of this area. In addition to that, in addition to the improvements on the management plans and in the fishery restricted areas, we are launching a very intensive regional-wide monitoring of fisheries activities. And this includes surveys at sea, this includes putting observers on board fishing vessels, not only the European waters, which already have a very good monitoring of their fishing activities, but also in all of the other countries of the Mediterranean that needs and they require assistance to have these monitoring systems in place. In addition to that, we are also trying to improve our understanding of the potential impacts of fisheries in vulnerable marine ecosystems. And here I wanted to mention a different number that was mentioned here today. You were speaking about very low percentage of marine protected areas, very low percentage of the area covered by closure areas. Well, the reality is that we are already protecting 60% of the Mediterranean from bottom trawling. This is a very large number. We are already implementing spatial fisheries management measures that cover many of the coastal areas. There are trawling forbidden from very coastal areas, trawling forbidden from below 1,000 meters. There are spatial restrictions of the kind of fishing activities that can be done in several places in the Mediterranean. So the fisheries sector is already taking a long and a very big effort on managing spatially these impacts from fisheries. And this is very important to say.
Miguel, I'm sorry, we are running out of time, and it's not your fault because you have been patient, waiting, and we still have 2 speakers to propose the announcement. And what I suggest is to create some dynamic here. And before Nasser Kamel concludes, is maybe first we can clap hands for Tatjana for doing a great job of moderating such a huge issue, we would need a day to address all the issues, but we have to stay within the rules of the game. And it's not very easy to conclude a day of workshops. Not for you, not for them, and not for me, so I'm sorry to be impolite. But I would like to do the transition, if you don't mind, with l'Office français de la biodiversité and the CNES, who could present, not together, because these are 2 worlds, but we are in this announcement because we wanted to conclude every workshop with a recommendation, with a call for action or an initiative, and then we would ask SG Nasser Kamel to conclude before we all go for dinners somewhere and continue this discussion. So merci beaucoup, Tatjana. Maybe I think we should plan exchanging seats because you have been standing for a long time. Donc, on peut l'applaudir, Tatjana. Merci beaucoup.
Let me thank the panelists before I go. Thank you very much for everything. It was a pleasure.
Allez-y.
Okay, Giuseppe. Yes, thank you.
Bonsoir à tous.
Good evening, everyone. Well, it's quite late in the day now.
Si on peut, je n'ai que 2 slides.
I only have 2 slides. I can be extremely brief on this, and they're just pictures. We're going to dive a little bit because we've been speaking about the Mediterranean. I will speak in French, obviously. So we're going to have a little dive, not as much of a deep dive as some of the previous speakers.
C'est beaucoup moins spectaculaire ce que je vais vous proposer, c'est d'aller entre 0 et 40 mètres.
Less spectacular. We're only going down to 40 meters in depth. Let's see if we can get that first slide on the screen. And we're going to be speaking about Posidonia,
plante marine
which is a marine plant, endemic, an endemic species, as you will all know,
de vastes herbiers et
which
des récifs
has
barrières qui rendent des
large
services
areas in the sea, and it
exceptionnels.
provides exceptional
La
services to
secrétaire d'État,
biodiversity.
Bérangère,
The Secretary of State underlined this point a short while ago, and I just wanted to remind you of it. But it would be good to see some pictures of these sea grasses, because we've been speaking about them a lot, but what do they look like? It would be wonderful to have the slide on the screen, says the speaker.
Le premier grand service
The first service that it offers to
entre 0 et 40 mètres à peu près
ecosystem, you find it between 0 and 40 meters in depth in the Mediterranean. Firstly, what they offer is nurseries. These are very important
plus de 50 espèces.
Because over 50 species live within them. We can't see the species here, but they are there somewhere within the seagrass. There are many, many species living there, and that's one of the top services it provides.
Limite l'érosion des plages.
Posidonia also limits beach erosion. That's one of the other services it offers.
Dire que pourquoi il faut faire quelque chose et très vite. Et troisièmement, ça a été dit par la secrétaire d'État, elle stocke du carbone dans la masse morte sous les herbiers et produit de l'oxygène. L'Amazonie, on peut parler des herbiers de Posidonie, qui sont des poumons.
The Amazon, but we could speak about the Posidonia network, which offers a great deal. 14 litres of oxygen per day are produced in just a small surface area. So just keep that figure in mind. That shows what an exceptional service that it offers, and we breathe that in as well, thanks to Posidonia.
Au plan juridique, les herbiers de Posidonie sont des habitats prioritaires au titre des conventions de Barcelone et des directives européennes, bien sûr. Pourtant, le cadre de protection de la Posidonie n'empêche pas sa destruction, comme l'a souligné tout à l'heure Bérangère.
As the previous speaker pointed out, we've seen that seagrasses are actually declining across the Mediterranean area, regardless of its protection status, including where we have marine protected areas as well, and up to 30% in 1 century of these grasses have been wiped out, mainly because of coastal area, trawling, of course, vessel, ship transport, as we've heard, and tourism.
La ministre a rappelé à quel point
the minister also
des
reminded
efforts ont
us
été déployés,
about how many efforts have been made, especially by France, to try to strengthen
en
the
faveur de la
legal framework in
protection
place
de la
and help to protect Posidonia across the whole of the French coastline. But of course, it's not been enough.
Sous l'impulsion de la
Alongside
Commission
that,
européenne,
spurred on by the European
il a
Commission,
été créé le réseau méditerranéen
the
pour la
Mediterranean Posidonia Network was created, the MPN.
Et il est aujourd'hui animé par les équipes de l'Office français de la
Today,
biodiversité.
it's the French Office for Biodiversity that heads this up, who are here present and whom I thank, and many other stakeholders have been involved as well. The MPN, and there are 60 members that are part of the network from 11 different countries. Of course, some of them are scientific experts. We have managers of MPAs as well. They've just been mentioned by our colleague from Monaco. Ocean professionals as well, many professionals working in oceans. International organizations.
Les travaux du MPN participent à renforcer la mise en œuvre du plan méditerranéen pour la conservation de la végétation marine issue de la Convention de Barcelone. Alors, très concrètement, ce réseau qui s'est créé, qui s'est constitué, qui est récent,
which is quite a recent creation, but it's made it possible to see a number of results already. There's a website.
Qui met en avant la
I want to tell you what it's called just
le
to save time,
recensement pays par pays des réglementations et des mesures
regulation as well that have been adopted and measures that have been adopted by different countries as well. There have been a number of very tangible recommendations made, and also there has been mapping carried out as well of areas of Posidonia across the Mediterranean basin to find out where Posidonia is and what its characteristics are. All of that is extremely important. And I will conclude on this note. Try to sum up the initiative to you.
En septembre 2021, un séminaire
there was a seminar organized in September 2021 in Volunteera, which brought the network together around an action plan. And the action plan should be the second slide that I wanted to put on the screen for you. And there are several axes to this action plan. Firstly, knowledge. That includes the mapping exercise of Posidonia across the Mediterranean. Greater awareness raising as well, because as previous speakers have pointed out, those who live around the Mediterranean region really need to grasp the importance of protecting these Posidonia grasses. And perhaps a Posidonia Day is required, some sort of awareness-raising activity. I believe that's on the table. But we won't be able to do anything without involving the people living around the Mediterranean. Of course, we need to work on conservation, and that needs to be consistent across the whole of the Mediterranean, not just to the north of the Mediterranean basin. It needs to apply everywhere, across the board. Otherwise, it won't amount to anything. Then, of course, prevention from land-based pollution as well, which is a threat. And then, of course, we mustn't forget promotion and financing of innovative technology, because innovation is needed, especially for the geological resources as well, which to protect against the ravages that this grass has faced. And this has been adopted by the largest majority possible, all states. Everyone needs to come together to join this network, the MPN. And I hope that this appeal, this Brest appeal, which has been launched, to try to offer better protection to Posidonia and to ensure that this network really brings together all stakeholders within the Mediterranean region. And I hope that we will find all of the resources required for all stakeholders, actors to come together and put these initiatives into practice. Sorry if I went over my speaking time, but I would warmly encourage you to join this network. Thank you very much.
It wasn't too long at all. It was perfect. Thank you very much. It's the end of the day. Of course, I would just like to invite our friends from WWF to come up to the podium, and then the CNES very quickly. But it doesn't mean it's going to be the end of our discussions. We have 2 days left. The idea of this seminar is to launch ideas, not just warnings, but ideas, and then perhaps we can pool our ideas together to have common to fulfill our common ambitions. And I hope heads of state and government present on Friday will also
there's no more that I can say, right? And let me give the appreciation to everybody in the room for staying. It's at the end of a very long day. But 2 words, and I'll be extremely, extremely brief, because I appreciate the moment. First of all, what emerges from this session is the shared passion and the joint effort that the Mediterranean family of organizations has. And 20 years ago, when I certainly started my career, we couldn't imagine that we would come here with the progress that we have today. And the leadership we've heard from the Commission and others is certainly important. WWF plays its part. Tonight, I use the opportunity to launch a new large initiative, which is a blue carbon initiative, with a perfect segue from the Posidonia network. So WWF will invest 10 million euros in protecting seagrass through protected areas, working with small-scale fishers, There is a global initiative that we will tag onto, and so the idea is to have a cooperative, open invitation to all organizations that are interested to join forces for the Mediterranean. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a good evening.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Est-ce que je pourrais avoir mes transparents? Merci. Je vous remercie pour l'invitation.
Thank you very much for the invitation so that we can speak about our initiative from the world of space. I don't know if I can have my slides up. So throughout this workshop and other workshops, we've heard a lot about having to understand, control, monitor, manage, etc. And the space sector, even though it cannot respond to all of these challenges alone, it does want to participate through applications and tools that can respond or give us some answers to some of these questions and challenges to help us to manage. So during the One Planet Summit, we set up the Space for Climate Observatory, which is there to try and foster small initiatives, small-scale initiatives, and so that all stakeholders can actually use the results that come out of these projects. So, based on this idea, it's this observatory which brings together all of these different organizations, and from them STEM projects, from scientists, but also from startups and from other types of companies, and even public institutions. And these projects, as you can see, benefit from an accreditation, so that they followed a certain procedure. And we want to ensure that this vision can be, and the results of these projects can be used at an international level. Now we're at the third session of these projects, and we saw that many of these projects were actually linked to the ocean. And when we look at all of the data that the IPCC uses to formulate its recommendations and its reports linked to the ocean, we decided to set up SCOMED. So it's the same as a SCO, the Space Climate Observatory, but there's a slight difference. That is to say that it is focused on the Mediterranean, as you will have understood this evening. The Mediterranean really has some specific, unique characteristics. It's like a patient that needs to receive a remedy, let's say. And we also started to think about monitoring biodiversity. So there isn't a lot that has to be changed in the procedure. It's just that we've modified it's not that we're going to completely modify the scope to make the SCOMED, but we were focusing on, for example, companies or organizations, institutions that focus on water treatment and turning their attentions to the Mediterranean. So, very quickly, we are quite ambitious because in the first 2 years we want to come up with projects on the focusing on the Mediterranean. Then we want to make sure that we can have tools, decision-making tools, and then at international level we want to extend this to all of the oceans of the world by 2036, as you can see, so that we can deploy these tools not only in the Mediterranean but in other areas of the world where perhaps the resources don't exist in order to carry out such a project. So a few phrases you can see here, 24 months for these projects. Concerning the Mediterranean, with regards to the regarding this project. You can see there are certain members that we're going to invite. First of all, focusing on the Mediterranean, and they're going to help us monitor the different projects. Mercator Océan is also ready to contribute to this project, and it's ready to also contribute its digital twin to this project. Mercator Ocean International, rather. So, I thank you very much for your attention, and here's some examples of some of the studies that we've already carried out. On the left, or from left to right, you can see the different measurements linked to seagrass. You also have studies linked to coastlines, shorelines, and coastline erosion. And on the right, you can, and here on the right, you can see how things have evolved in one particular coastline area. And finally, the submersion, some submersion studies. You can see the zones that would suffer from flooding in 2050 and the impact it would have on these areas. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking us into the world of space. And now, Secretary General, thank you for being so patient. We call you up to the floor to hear what you have to say. You are our co-chair, and indeed your management is essential for the Mediterranean, for the Union of the Mediterranean Union, which is so important, the important topic that we're discussing today. Thank you very much.
English or French? Huh? Whatever. My choice. Huh? Half. Okay, let's start in French then. Écoutez, vous êtes tous fatigués.
I know that you're all tired. It's the end of the evening, so I'll only be a couple of minutes. First of all, I'd like to thank France from the bottom of my heart for giving the Mediterranean this, let's say, pride of place today in this One Ocean Summit. And it's extremely pertinent. I'd also like to thank all of the participants, all of our speakers. I was a little bit frustrated, let's say, because given the scope of their knowledge and the efforts of their respective organizations, whether it be the European Commission, whether it be states such as France or Spain or WWF or you, Mr. Secretary General,
I would have loved to hear more about every single initiative, what DG Environment is doing, what DG Fishery is doing. I mean, for me, being the journalist in the room, in charge of a multilateral regional organization, grouping 42 member states, the EU member states, and the 15th southern and eastern Mediterranean states, every single thing that was said today needed to be further discussed. So I would have loved that this would have been organized through a series of 4 or 5, and over the 2 or 3 days we're spending here in Brest. But at least my takeaway is that, one, there is an overwhelming consensus from the civil society to the political authority to the multilateral institutions, starting by the very strong EU, the Commission, and others like WWF, and so many others, and of course the Union for the Mediterranean. 2, science agree with politics, and that's very important, because the science, Guillaume has magnificently given us an overview of the challenges in terms of marine protected zone, but at the same time, when I heard DG Environment, I felt there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. The same applies actually to what the Barcelona process, that's mine. Yours is the Barcelona Convention. Well, It's a very natural lapsus, I have to say. Yeah, yes. But the Barcelona Convention, when it's groundbreaking, I mean, in terms of emission control area. And I have to tell you, during our ministerial on blue economy and our ministerial UFM, Union pour la Méditerranée ministerial on environment and climate action and blue economy, the subject came back and some country wanted to, but we managed to keep the convention and the Barcelona commitment standing because it's extremely important for the region. Fishery, I heard very, very encouraging. J'ai écouté des informations très encourageantes, que ça soit...
I heard some encouraging information as well, whether it came from Rome or elsewhere. However,
if I'm not mistaken, I'm not the scientist, 80% of fish are overfished in our Mediterranean Sea until today, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, that's the important piece of news, because I read what's happening today. I'm no expert. When I hear 80, I'm shocked. But you're telling me it used to be 90. So maybe in 5 years we'll be at 40%, but overfishing going in the right direction. So I will end up by thanking again France, thanking you for staying so late, thanking the depth of knowledge, and apologizing because every one of them deserved a full hour, because he had so many things to tell us and to teach us and for us to learn from them. Thank you very, very much.
Bravo, bravo, merci beaucoup, bravo.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll close with a family, une photo de famille, et puis on va tous aller dîner.
And then we're going to go and eat after this family photo. See you again tomorrow.
10 workshops, 10 forums, and 4 hotspots. Merci beaucoup.